All right, welcome back to season two of the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast. Joined by Jordan Lehman. I'm Jeremy Nygaard. We're going to talk Middle Border Conference girls hoops today. Jordan, how you doing?
Doing well. It's obviously it's fun to be back. It's exciting. Probably most for you and I. But it's more exciting that it's that time of year. Both, boys and girls hoops have started practicing. Girls got a game starting next week at least. I don't know if any around the state are starting this weekend, but I know that Baldwin Woodville obviously starts next week. And yeah, it's going to be so much fun to be in gyms, to feel the atmosphere. Should be full gyms right away. And yeah, it's exciting, man.
Yeah, so girls actually start Tuesday. I went to a game Tuesday night.
There was a game on Tuesday?
Yeah, there's plenty of games. There's games Tuesday, there's games tonight, there's games tomorrow. Games are in full swing. We just don't play our first one till Tuesday. So we're gonna just make a quick buzz through the conference. We're gonna start with the Amory Warriors. So Amory finished towards the bottom of the conference last year and have an experienced coach in Gabe Bratzel, 10th year. And what they did is they lost 3 starters from last year and return 2. So one of those is Grace Carlson, who actually coached a little bit in AAU a couple of years ago. But we'll obviously see them a couple times this year. But when you lose 3 starters, one of them a Granica, who probably played a significant role for a couple of years, a Wallen, who was their leading scorer, and when you bring 2 starters back and not a lot of, I don't recall them playing a lot of girls. You're probably looking at, that rear of the conference, trying to compete to be in the top of the bottom half. And that's the Amory Warriors for this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's a program that obviously had a lot of success not too long ago. So a lot of these girls were either in the stands or in the program during that success. And it's when you're on the outside looking in, it's impossible to know what a culture is. If it's kind of all the way through the program, youth and up, or if it's, kind of some programs a little bit more cyclical where it's kind of talent dependent. And so it'll be interesting to see if there is kind of a group that's putting a lot of work and is that could get them towards, like you said, the top of the lower half, or maybe even higher. But definitely, losing the 3 starters, like you said, losing the leading scorer, there's going to be some girls for Amory that are under the lights for probably the first time. So be interesting to watch them. And below them, or right above them rather, in the preview is St. Croix Central. And we've had some insight into St. Croix Central with some coaches there that we've known. We know that program is one that, like Amory, had a ton of success not too long ago, where competing for regional titles, into the sectionals, winning 20 plus games. And that's a school that's chock full of female athletes. They have a really successful cross country program. They have a really successful volleyball program. And the last couple of years, obviously the girls basketball's fallen hard times. They have some height and some experience. Gostovich being 5'10", there's a 5'8" Sydney Burgess. And you know a little bit more about Coach Holly Spoo. She's been around. She obviously knows the game really, really well. So what do you kind of see with them moving forward?
So I actually went and watched them play on Tuesday. They played in Richmond. And like you mentioned, the Gostovich girl, I think, is one of very few of their volleyball players that plays basketball. I'm trying to pull their roster up. They had who appears to be Delaney Lloyd. She's a junior. I think she's their best player. And she actually went down with an injury, so they played most of their game without her. But they were young. Burgess is a senior, but I think they went mostly sophomores and juniors. So they struggled against New Richmond. I mean, New Richmond was long and tall, and New Richmond obviously lost from last year too. I mean, that when they were second, I believe second in the conference and the 1 seed in the region. But the central team, Coach Fu is not lacking for basketball understanding and the ability to instruct. It's just it's relatively early in her tenure. She's been not gifted all the athletes in the school coming up for basketball. So I think in that vein, it takes time to kind of develop your youth program and then develop those kids into high school in the way that you would like them to be. So I would like to think that their girls basketball program is on their way up. It's just, given where they were a handful of years ago and where they want to be, it's a tough road to hoe, and they got a ways to go. So, I would think that, I don't believe they won a game in the conference last year. So
Right.
they ain't going down, right?
No.
And I think they'll be competitive. It was hard to tell because Nurchman got after them with some full court stuff and threw some kind of zone trap on them, and it got out of hand in a hurry. But they continue to compete, and I think that's going to be kind of how they might surprise some teams if they can just stay in games and have some balls go their way. But again, them and Amory are probably their two teams that have the furthest to go to see a lot of basketball success.
Yeah, because I mean, next up the line being Osceola, they've got because one thing I think it's fair to say Amory and Singer Central maybe don't have a premier talent, right? When it comes to a stud, somebody that's really going to carry the load. And Osceola with Hattie Fox, she's proven, from the time she was a freshman that she's very, very skilled, very talented. And now obviously with talent, I feel like probably she seems like a girl that's probably putting in a lot of work as well. So as she physically, stronger, faster, quicker, along with that talent, she averaged right about 18 a game last year, which is a lot of points for high school basketball. It's a lot of points to average. And so they, looking at, they did already play and they lost to what I would assume is going to be a very competitive St. Croix Falls team. And they didn't have their box score, what she did there, but they were, just under 500 overall. They won 5 games in conference last year. You coaching and having coached against teams with a premier talent, right? Teams with a player where it's really not, are we going to shut them down? It's how much can we hold them to, right? Like if Osceola, if Fox is able to be that for Osceola, it's true that will win. I mean, if you've got enough of a supporting cast, that's going to win you games.
Right. I mean, they were 5-9 in the conference, and they lost 2 starters who were, less than 5 points a game.
Right.
And really, to me, the 6 teams that we haven't talked about are going to be able to compete with each other on any given night. And Osceola, that losing to St. Croix Falls, like you said, they're going to be a good team. 17-point game, so maybe not overly competitive. They're going to play Turtle Lake tonight, and I think Turtle Lake has a sophomore that's phenomenal. And they'll maybe come up on the short end of the stick tonight. But once they get into conference play, I think they're going to have, because of returning, maybe the most decorated player in the conference, being an all-conference player, first team last year. And she's only a junior. Like, girls get stronger. They get, they continue to improve. And when you're scoring 18 a game as a sophomore, you're going to probably be pretty good. And so it looks like they returned some seniors that played. They have almost a 6-footer that was 10-10 last year, and she's going to be a senior. And when you can do that, have a perimeter threat and have a post threat, you're going to be able to compete with anybody on any given night. And I think when we'll get to Prescott later, but Prescott was kind of the measuring stick, and having graduated Bella Lenz, that the measuring stick, now that bar drops, right?
Mhm.
And so Osceola was 5-9, but it's going to be a completely different looking conference. And
Mhm.
at a minimum, Osceola is going to be able to compete night in and night out with anybody. And I think
Mhm.
that's going to be the case for the next 5 teams we talk about as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Ellsworth, it's a similar story. The one thing with Ellsworth that I'm curious about, because anybody that follows girls hoops, I mean, when you see a couple freshmen that are both averaging over, with Janke and with Brookshaw, they both averaged double figures scoring. Janke actually averaged a double double, with 6 assists as well. And Janke's very tall, but they did lose Autumn Ernie, and that's 23 points a game, and that's a lot of points a game. Like I said earlier about like Fox with 18, 23 that's a ton. And so it's always interesting to see how younger athletes fit into the kind of the premier role. When if I don't, when they have to go through the mental gymnastics of, if I don't play well, that's tough for us, right? Whereas last year, Ernie and me and you both watched Ellsworth twice. We were able to go on the road there and stream. Ernie was not only a great talent, but she was a great teammate as well. It was very evident that she played extremely hard on both ends of the court, and was extremely mentally tough. Baldwin Woodville jumped out to a lead in that game. Baldwin Woodville was controlling a lot of that game, and then it was Ernie time.
Mm-hmm.
And defensively and offensively, she took it upon herself to win that game. But looking forward for that team having a double double in Janke, who's a 5'10" true point guard, and maybe still growing, and then Brookshaw, who did a really nice job last year, who didn't have average double figures, I'm sorry, but did a really nice job. They've got a ton of returning experience. Coach Janke, coming off of a successful fall with the football team, and he's coached there now for some time. So it'll be interesting to see, because, like you said, 5-1, that top half, over half of the conference is going to be extremely competitive. Led by 2 sophomores, primarily what the Panthers are going to be able to do.
Yeah, and I'm curious. You sometimes you think about how, I mean, it's because it's pretty obvious when you have a successful basketball team like Ellsworth does, how that's going to impact, or excuse me, football team, how that's going to impact their boys' basketball team, right?
Right.
Because Jack Janke right now is in Camp Randall warming up, and that impact is obvious because it's you're not playing that next season. But when your head basketball coach for the girls team is still coaching, right? We're a week and a half into practice. They've already had a game and they won that game, but they have a game against Richmond. They were supposed to have a game against Richmond tonight that got postponed, right? And then they come back and they play Central on Tuesday. But then they get Thanksgiving off, so then they have a game Monday. But this isn't like, let's slowly get ready for the season. This is like hit the ground running because we got games. And I'm assuming coach them on Tuesday. But as someone that is, focused on 2 things, he's probably giving a lot of focus to the football season, right? And so I think they're going to be a good team. Molly Janke's phenomenal. We watched her in one of her first games as a high school player, and it was like, yep, she's different. And then we watched her brother really kind of transform halfway through his junior season. And it's like, what if Molly does that same thing? Like, that's, as basketball fans, that's fun. As someone that's not necessarily cheering for the Ellsworth Panthers, often less fun, right? But that sophomore class, and I know that it's Janke Brookshaw, but that sophomore class has always been really, really good. And you mentioned losing Autumn Ernie, who she was different and she did things really well. And they lost, a really tall girl and some other guard type players, but they're going to still bring back a handful of seniors, as well as enter in a whole bunch of new sophomores that they didn't necessarily play last year. So Could they finish in the top three in the conference? Absolutely. Are they going to be a team that's better, considerably better in late February than late November? Also, absolutely. Right. I mean, it's possible they finish fifth in the conference and are the team that nobody wants to play once the brackets are released. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how that team develops through the year as they can, continue to play. Because right now, I would assume, the girls that are basketball players, they didn't practice today. School got out at noon, right? They don't have school tomorrow. Maybe they come in on Saturday and practice a little bit, but these first 8-9 days are days where you're installing and trying to work through the things that you haven't been able to do, and they're just going to be set at a little bit of a disadvantage because of what else is happening with their school.
Yeah. Obviously it's a great excuse to start late for Coach Jenke. He wouldn't rather be anywhere else. And it's a lot of fun even for the conference to be able to watch Ellsworth compete on that level. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, and definitely going to be a fun team to watch. And they've got a ton of youth, and it'll be interesting to see now with Somerset, like to kind of turn the page. I think it's safe to say that other than Prescott lost some extremely talented players, but Somerset lost some pretty talented players too, and a lot of them. Looks here they lost. I mean, you're talking over 40 points a game, and Taylor Paulson, really good 3-point shooter, and it's in this day and age, it's invaluable to have a lethal perimeter shooter. And like watching Lesha, she was impactful, ton of height with her and Schochner.
Well, and the way that the preview in WisSports has it, it says that Lesha's 5'10". I don't believe she's much smaller than that. She's a guard.
No. Oh, and she's returning.
Yeah.
So no, but
Danny Schochner was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So losing that kind of height, that kind of experience with seniors like Paulson and Schochner, watching them play. Did they split with Baldwinville last year?
So they lost at our place, from what I recall, and Paulson didn't play very well.
Right.
They ended up ending our season.
Right.
So, and then they went to the sectionals. They beat Altoona, but what they had was a very balanced attack.
Right.
And you got to replace Paulson, you got to replace Schochner. And I believe there was an older Gakowski that is gone now too.
Right.
And they play River Falls tonight, so they'll get a little bit of they'll get some the taste in their mouth before playing a conference game against Baldwinville next Tuesday.
Right.
But the thing that's going to be interesting, as far as rivalries go, in the conference, when I played, Somerset wasn't they were a Dunn St. Croix team. They were not a thought. But if you look at girls sports, last year, our season, Baldwinville season, ended in basketball at Somerset's gym, right?
Right.
Last spring, Somerset's softball season ended over at Mill Pond, right? Volleyball, Somerset season ended in our gym.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Lesha, Mackenzie Lesha, a couple of weeks ago was featured as a triple threat athlete. And like she talked about playing Prescott and basketball and playing Baldwinville and the other sports, because it's, that's where the target is. And I think Somerset's target is going to be focused a lot on us. Like obviously Prescott won a lot of games over the last couple of years, but there's something to be said about being a senior and having your season ended by the same group of girls over and over and over again. And so Tuesday is going to be a fun game from that perspective, because Somerset's probably still thinking about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mackenzie Lesha is a phenomenal player, and like she filled it up from a box score perspective. She was less than 10 a game, but almost 5 boards, over 5 assists, 4 steals. Like she did it all. She'll be doing more without the studs, all the studs around her. And they'll bring up in some, obviously some younger girls. And Heather Gatkowski was a very good player last year too. But when you compare what they have to these other teams, you could say, why not to Ellsworth? You could say, why not to Osceola? You certainly say, well, why not to Somerset? They can be there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that top 5, every team's going to come into it with a different reason of why, they're going to win the conference, right? As it happens. The one team in that top 5 that's most intriguing to me is Prescott, because they've been on top, and they've been on top in a way where, as former athletes and as former coaches that have been a part of successful teams, you begin to feel like you can't not be on top. Like it's right. Like, well, I play for so-and-so, so I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be a part of a really good team. Right. And with Prescott losing 4 stellar seniors in Matzik, in Bank, in Dahlman, and then obviously the player of the year, probably back-to-back player of the year, was Lenz, maybe not her junior year, but, definitely, I mean, obviously the player of the year, senior year, in Bella Lenz, who we watched in multiple sports, and she's just a different level, right? Mm-hmm. Prescott gets a new coach. Prescott, like I said, loses 4 out of 5 starters. They obviously have a ton coming up, but you've a good relationship with some coaches around that area. Like, and you watched a lot of softball last spring as well, more than I did, with some of those athletes maybe crossing over. Like, what's your take on Prescott when it comes to this, trying to defend their crown that they've had for a couple of years?
So they obviously lost Lenz and they lost Dahlman, who were both very good players. I don't remember exactly how they went with the starting lineup. I know the Postuma girl started as a freshman. She's 6 foot, but she was more of a perimeter player. Then they had a Matzik that was a sophomore, that's a junior. And they had a roll girl, and they had a number of different girls that were contributors. They played the other night and put up 89 on Oliva Strom. And I don't expect Oliva Strom to, be world beaters because they're a pretty small school. But Matzik had 19, and Riley Radloff, who played last year, had 11, and a Budworth girl, I don't remember her, 10. And I mean, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 girls with 8 or more, 3 other girls with 5. So I think, they're going to be okay. They have it listed, a bunch of other returning players, and really, you kind of touched on it with Ellsworth too. When you have someone as good as Autumn Ernie, and then she leaves, you have to fill in so much, right? And it's not that girls couldn't do it; it's that she just did so much. When you take Bella Lenz off the floor for a considerable amount of time, like, there's going to be girls that just do things that even Prescott people that have watched these girls forever will be like, never seen her do that before. And if that's this Isabel Matzik scoring 20 a game, that could be a real thing, And so we've seen it, with the boy on the boys side. And obviously it happens in the girl side, where the team loses significant players, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a rebuilding year. And it's like, nope, just more of a reloading year. And that could be Prescott. Now they I believe, did the girls lose to Aquinas too? I think they did. I think it was getting beat pretty easily. And I don't know that that's the case for, like, they're in the same sectional as the rest of the conference teams. And I don't see Aquinas in D3 at all this year. So, there's definitely a St. Croix Falls there, who is a really good team, and has been a really good team. But I think Prescott, like you mentioned, their head coach is gone. The middle board player of the year, all-state player is gone. But there's plenty of talent in those halls, and we've seen it for years on both sides of the court, that they're going to be okay. And why not Prescott, right?
Yeah.
And until someone beats them, why not? And so them, along with the other teams we've talked about, all have very, very, there's no reason that they should be in the gym thinking, it's not going to be us. They're be in the gym thinking, absolutely, it's us. So another very strong and in my opinion, deep team. And I think could that be the difference in a year? It certainly could be.
Right. And another thing with experience like that, when you have the opportunity as a young player to be led, like I'm sure a lot of those girls were led last year by Lentz, by Dahlman, by Matzik, by Bank, you learn more than any coach could ever teach. Just from conversations on the bus, in the locker room, hanging out, like you learn what it feels like to be a part of a positive culture, a culture of growth, a culture of competitors. And obviously that's a testament to the coaching and the culture that's been built there, both boys and girls. Obviously we know Coach Johnson really well, and it's the same thing with the boys. And we'll talk about them in a different podcast, but it's just Prescott's going to be a favorite in my mind until they prove me wrong. Right.
Absolutely.
And so with them, we're very familiar with Prescott. We're very familiar with that dominance. What I'm not familiar with at all is Altoona. And you have some relatives, some in-laws from that area. And so I'll kind of let you lead the way with them. What's your take on Altoona? And I know that looks here like they've got a transfer coming in. They've got a girl that's supposed to be over 6 foot. Like what's the deal with the Railroaders?
So Altoona last year in the same region as us beat Ellsworth, drilled Ellsworth in the first round, and then beat Altoona in the next round, beat Nourishment in the next round at Nourishment before falling in a 1-point game to Somerset. And they did lose some girls. I watched the Somerset Altoona girls game, and they lost a guard that was really good, first team all conference player, and another guard that was a small, quick player. And they do have a 6'5" sophomore. And obviously when you're 6'5", that you can't be taught that. And it's hard to say because I didn't watch a ton of games. I mean, she averaged 10 and 8. Molly Janke did that as a freshman at 5'10". There's still a lot from what I've seen and from what I've been told talking to people that have been able to watch her more. There's still a lot of basketball to be learned, right? There's a lot of basketball that she needs to be taught because she's young, right? She's young and you don't become 6'5" and understand how to control your body when you're 6'5" overnight. But obviously there's Division I teams that look at her and say, yep, we would take a 6'5" girl and hope that you can teach that girl everything that you would want her to learn. So that's definitely going to be a thing. Is she going to be the best post player in the conference? Certainly not at the beginning of the year, right? Now is that to say that she won't be the best post player in the conference in 3 years? No, but the hard thing to always gauge with Altoona is it's Eau Claire, right? It's a public school our size, but they're drawing off the same group of kids that Memorial, Regis, and North are drawing off of. It's just that road instead of the other roads. They do have a girl. Who did I see? She's coming from North, right? Same group of girls, 5'10" point guard. I feel like she's probably going to be okay, right? She averaged 5 and 5 as a sophomore at North. And they bring back another girl who came off their bench last year that was a sophomore that was decent. With the confidence too that we went to Richmond and knocked off the second team in the conference last year. and gave Somerset everything they could handle in the next round at their place too. So if I'm Altoona, I'm confident that why not us, right? And that's what's going to make this conference so much fun to follow this year is there might be some things that settle and teams that kind of settle lower than we think right now. But on any given night, Altoona could beat anybody. And it's gonna be a lot of. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight every night with at least 6 of these teams that are going to be able to say, yeah, we got a shot. And last year the champ was, I think Prescott was undefeated, right? Undefeated in conference, or did they have a loss or two? I think they're undefeated.
Probably undefeated. I'll go with that.
You're not gonna have an undefeated team in the conference this year. Like your champ is gonna have
Correct.
3 losses, 4 losses maybe. And so I think that's what's gonna be kind of fun is you could lose a game and be like, you know what, that doesn't matter. You know, we're gonna win it on. Yeah, Prescott was undefeated. Nourishment lost 3. Somerset lost 5 and was 4th. Or was 3rd. So that to me is what's going to be fun. Now the thing that maybe underrated, underappreciated, under talked about, Altoona is not really in the footprint of the middle border, right? Football games happen on Friday nights. There's nothing really going on Saturday. We're going to have girls from the schools that are close to us drive into Altoona. Prescott's going to drive to Altoona, potentially on a Tuesday night and have to take an hour and 45-minute bus ride home. Like
right.
that might wear teams down a little bit quicker because it's not necessarily that an hour and 45-minute bus ride is tough, but these things are happening on school nights and in the middle border. I mean, yeah, Osceola, Prescott, that's a poke, and the middle of the St. Croix County is fortunate. It's an hour drive or less to everyone where Baldwin Woodville Central has to go. But I'm really curious to see how that impacts things. If you have a game at Altoona one night and then you got to play the next night, that's different than playing across the road and then coming back and doing it the next night. So I don't know. I think Altoona will be a very formidable team, and why not them? Just like why not anybody else?
Right, and obviously close to our hearts and our fandom is BW, Baldwin Woodville, and being as objective as possible with them. In the preview here it says it's their they're the team to beat, and that's obviously a bold statement. And like we've talked about, the conference is laden with talent. It's laden with teams that have a ton of reasons to believe they're going to be really good. But the thing that sticks out for BW is, it says starters lost here, and it's none, right? That's the thing that, the Blackhawks have most in their favor is there will be when, the expected starting 5, jogs onto the court, it's complete familiarity. Mm-hmm. They pretty much know what they're going to get from each other. They're, all but one of them the same age. And, with Rome Hill playing with that group for the last couple of years, there's pretty good familiarity there in multiple sports. Another thing with BW, not basketball related, but just girls kind of culture program related, is they come off of winning a regional championship in volleyball and winning both regional and sectional championships in softball and playing for a state title. And so, knowing these girls closely on their way up, you more so, they expect success, and they've been having success. And so, basketball being its own entity and its own nuanced sport when it comes to team unity and chemistry, and even obviously the things like strategy and talent. But these girls, like you talked about with Somerset, kind of building those rivalries, like Brooke Klatt, Anna Jord, Maddie Jensen, in volleyball with those 3, and Kate Grotskreitz as well with softball and volleyball, and Brooke and Marnie. They've gotten used to beating a lot of these athletes that they're going to be facing, right? And so have they had the success that maybe they want in basketball? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, obviously last year being around 500 overall, and being a team that competed pretty much with everybody, but finished, right in the middle of the pack in the conference, just, in the top four, which is not too shabby, but, going player by player, you've watched Brooke Klatt play for a long time. She's been a player that's been really reliable. What do you think? What evolutions do you think kind of happened for her and maybe some other players this year for Coach English?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said you're bringing back 5 girls that spent a ton of time playing together, not only here but in other sports, and all 5 starters on the basketball court were significant contributors in volleyball, right? With the exception of 2 girls that started in volleyball. These were 5 of the top 7, right? Or 5 of the top 8, and so they had success. And I think for a number of these girls, for Kate, for Brooke, for Marnie, it started in the spring when they just did what they did on the softball field. And Anna and Maddie were I believe both in track, and I'm guessing their field events were probably very good too. So that to me is not the question's not about how good those 5 are going to be. I think those 5 are going to be phenomenal. Independently, they're all very good. Together, they're better. Anna's she's gonna be a double waiting to happen. And I think Maddie's very similar to her. And there's not other teams in the conference that can say that about their post players, right? Marnie, who averages more rebounds, than her height. Like, that's tough to do when your height's 5'0", and to average more than 5.0 rebounds. But she's always going to be the smallest dog in the fight, but the dog that I wouldn't want to fight. Kate is going to be a perimeter threat because she's always been a really good shooter, and that's what she's going to continue to do. And then there's Brooke, who probably is the most underappreciated athlete that we've had in the building in a long time, and probably the most disliked athlete by other conference players in a long time, right? I mean, it's like, how long is Brad Davidson going to be a Badger? That's what other teams say about Brooke Klatt. And it's not necessarily that, it's not to say that Brooke's not super talented, because she is. She's a phenomenal athlete. She works extremely hard. She's a great leader. But if you think of like a mixed drink, right? Here's a metaphor. And you pour the ingredients together, those ingredients should all be good. When you take a sip and you're like, wait, this doesn't taste right. Well, then you put a straw in, which isn't really even part of the drink. But without the straw stirring the drink, that's Brooke. She's the straw, right?
Right.
So all the other pieces then become better because Brooke's there, and Brooke is going to work. Brooke is going to work harder, and Brooke is going to do things that the other team just don't have an answer for. Now, is Brooke going to average 20 a game? No. Is there going to be a game where Brooke scores 20 and that's why we win? Probably, right? Is Brooke going to take a charge and change the swing of a game based on something that doesn't show on the box score? Yep. And that's, again, those 5, that's not going to be an issue. And it wasn't an issue last year. The issue is going to be, and it's obvious, who else is going to play, because you can't play 5 girls 36 minutes.
Right.
And we basically played 7 last year, and the 2 that also played, they're not playing, right?
Right.
And so why Baldwin? Well, you return your 5 starters. Why not? You can't just play 5, right?
Right.
And if Tuesday against Somerset, and a lot of it's going to have to be feeling out who else can do it. But if you have 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on the style that Coach English wants to play, then that's going to be a problem for teams if that's the answer. If the answer is 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, that's going to be a problem for the Blackhawks.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, and having a new coach as well. We talk about familiarity between the 5 starters. What is extremely interesting and what's going to be interesting to watch is what it's like for those 5 starters to have a new voice, right? Coaching them,
Right.
Because that's something that you being a former head coach that came in, what it's like to see a group of players, even players that are familiar with you, that now have to kind of take orders, or at least they're under your tutelage, right? And it's a different vibe, it's a different feel, and it's a different energy, and it takes a special person not only to coach but to be able to do that effectively and quickly. That's the biggest thing for this group, is not how they kind of accommodate or assimilate into Coach English's system, but how quickly they can do it, because they play a conference game right now. You know what I mean? It's coming against a team that, like we've said, multiple teams in this conference and in this part of the state that they're really not going to give you a night off. And so, taking out the objective cap for a second, this is the most excited I've ever been for a girls basketball season at BW, because I know how much these 5 want to have the same success that they've had in volleyball and in softball, how much they want to have that success in the basketball court. It's been something that, whether it's through, being a part of the weight training program here with them since they were freshmen, talking about that, seeing them put in the work for all those years, that's been paying off in volleyball and softball. Seeing it pay off on the basketball court would be super special. The depth issue is a real issue, and that's going to be interesting to watch how Coach English solves that. But it's going to be so much fun, and it's exciting. It's the best time of year for basketball fans. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So for people that are interested, one of the kind of quirks of this year for Baldwin Woodville, we're gonna stream the game on Tuesday against Somerset, right? And then they go after Thanksgiving, road Elkmont. Later that week, road Amory. The next week, road New Richmond. Home game Friday, December 10th against Ellsworth, which will be fun. Friday nights, great atmosphere, fun time. At Altoona, at Durand, not in a non-conference. After at Durand on a Monday, home against Boyceville. So we're going back to back. That's a home game. And then after Christmas, two tournament games in Menominee. And then we're in the new year and we're at River Falls. The quirk of the schedule is we just don't have a lot of home non-conference games. In fact, we do play St. Croix Falls at home, which is, we also played them at home last year, and Boyceville at home. That's it for home non-conference. So the flip side of that coin is you're going to be battle tested on the road, going into hostile environments when the playoff rolls around. And basketball, unlike football, you don't have to be great that first month. You don't have to be good the first month. If you're bad in the first month of football and you lose 2 non-conference games, it doesn't really matter. If you then lose your first 2 conference games, you need to then basically not necessarily be perfect, but you need to be pretty close to perfect to even get a chance to play for anything. In basketball, if the girls can, if the girls, and this isn't just Baldwin Woodville, this is any girls or boys basketball team. If you lose your first 5, that doesn't matter, right? From a end of the year thing to seeding to that, it doesn't matter. Now, from a confidence standpoint, if you get beat 5 straight times, that can impact you mentally. But the non-conference games, if you drop one early, and that's an argument in the seeding meeting for why a team should be seeded higher, that doesn't really carry a lot of weight. If it's a conference game that you drop early, you're going to see that team again later. Right. So, yep, Somerset, November 23rd against Baldwin Woodville. The impact of that game is going to be so much less than Tuesday, January 25th at Somerset. Right. Regardless of how game one goes, game two is the one that we say, yeah, but this is what happened on that night. Right. So, we talked about Ellsworth. This is how it's going to be. They're going to hit the ground walking maybe instead of running. Even though I think a lot of those basketball girls don't necessarily play volleyball, that they've probably been playing basketball a ton. These first 3, 4, 5 really weeks of the season, it's feeling it out, man. It's the first few rounds of a heavyweight fight. You just want to see what the other guy can do or the other team can do, and that's what you said about being excited about the season, entirely true. But that's what's going to make January and February that much crazier, because whatever happens before then kind of goes out the window, and you're going to see teams getting better. Hopefully, fingers crossed for everybody, there's not going to be girls that are missing 2 weeks at a time, right?
Right.
Boys and girls. Hopefully, that's something that we start to move away from, because that's unfortunate for these kids in their potentially final year or years of playing organized sports. But it's going to be, in my opinion, and I've been wrong before, and that's why I'm willing to do this, because if I'm wrong, someone can say, look what you said, you idiot. And I'll be like, I said that. I think this year is going to be top to bottom one of the most competitive years that we've seen in a long, long time. And we'll stream the home games, and hopefully the road teams stream their game when we're on the road. Those teams stream so everybody can watch. But I think we'll definitely talk more girls basketball. I don't know when you want to talk boys preview, but we'll do that sometime soon.
Yeah, that'll be coming soon. Obviously, boys coming up here, probably games, if not late next week. Definitely, BW our home stomping grounds. They start on the 30th of November, and so yeah, we'll talk about the boys slate. It's definitely similar to the girls in the sense a lot of teams that are going into the year like, yeah, it's our year. And so that's to come. And for those watching, listening, thank you for your attention. We do cover Western Wisconsin sports in the sense that we'll highlight a lot of the premier teams in other conferences, and a little bit more experienced, Nygaard and I are with the boys side, just because we know a lot more names and we know a lot more people on that side. So we have some better insights into Big Rivers territory, Dunn St. Croix territory, even Lakeland, Clover Belt. But covering, obviously we're going to be calling both girls and boys games at home for BW this year. Can't wait to do that again. And yeah, the boys preview coming soon. But yeah, it's going to be exciting, man.
So that's what we have for tonight. It's Thursday. This should be posted by the end of the night. Hopefully by the time that Ellsworth is holding up a ball that's darker than silver. That's what I'm cheering for Ellsworth.
Absolutely.
Right? I hope that Ellsworth wins. Catholic Memorial beat our girls in state softball. Catholic Memorial needs to lose the football game. I will pound my fist. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm not overly confident, but I'm cheering for the Panthers tonight. So thanks for watching. I'm Jeremy. That's Jordan. We'll do it again. And until then, stay safe, and we will see you later.
See you soon.